What's going on, everyone? Happy Friday morning. Welcome into our latest Trade to Black podcast presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dale. It's good to have you all here. What'd you guys think of all the week so far? I've been asking a few comments before we went live here today. What's the overall general sentiment? Do we still feel confident that we will get some rescheduling news at some point? How do we feel? Do we feel good? Do we feel uncertain? We're going to talk about that today. Seth Yakin is going to join us in just a moment. We're going to talk about some hypothetical things, such as if it does get announced, what does the markets and overall the industry look like the morning after it does get announced? And I know this is a big if, but it's always good to speculate just a little bit to see what we could prepare for in the event that President Trump and the Trump administration does indeed make that announcement. So lots to think about. Just checking out your comments, just waiting for Seth right now. But yeah, it's been a heck of a week. I know it's been volatile. We've seen some pullbacks. I think a lot of you were hoping we'd get some sort of announcement last week, which didn't happen. And since then, people are starting to feel like, is this indeed going to happen? Or is this just another carrot being dangled in front of us of the 11th hour, where we get some great promise, but then it doesn't actually get delivered the 11th hour? I think, like I said before, we have to be patient. I do think something is coming. As Anthony and I said on the podcast on Wednesday, we do believe that, end of September. That's the hope. Does it happen before that? Who knows? But we're clearly hoping at some point we get some announcements here relatively soon, because that would be huge for the industry. So just checking out some of the comments here. Still waiting for Seth. Dan from the Chart Guys is going to join us as well in a couple of minutes. Going to talk about some of the price action. What'd you guys all think of that pullback, VFF? But man, it looks like it's rebound. I also saw the tweet that Mike Tyson put out this morning when somebody asked him on Twitter about whether or not he thinks rescheduling is going to happen. He said, yes, yes, and yes. So there you go. You got to have some sort of belief. If there's anyone connected in the space right now, it's obviously Mike Tyson and his team. So hopefully we can have him on, and when there is an announcement, it'd be great to have him back on, like I had him back in July in Germany. But good people to stay connected to. So if he's staying optimistic or being optimistic, then one can only hope. But yeah, I hear you, Christopher Brady. 2 weeks, 2 more weeks, another 2 weeks. No one knows right now. Let us know some questions when Seth comes on. If there's anything in particular, let me know. 1 second. Just got to send over this link to Seth. 1 second, everybody. Here you go, sir. Bear with us here. That always helps. You got to send over the link to the guest if they want to join. Big announcement with Trump coming at 4 p.m. today. I did see that. Is it cannabis? Who knows? Wouldn't that be nice? What do you think would happen if you made an announcement at 4 o'clock today and announced rescheduling, how the markets would open up on Monday morning? That'd be a nice couple of days just fantasizing. You like the weekend, but man, oh man, if I could fast track into Monday morning, I'd do that. But that would be very, very nice. Good morning, all from Minnesota. Fanapy Growth. Good to see you. Got to look at CGC. Whatever you think of that announcement last week that they made. A couple of you people have asked if we can get Luke back on. Just to give you a quick heads up, we've reached out to the team, so he'll come on at some point this month. So as well, Senator Rand Paul, we got all the outline and itinerary. It's all going to be about hemp next Wednesday. They basically said this is what we want to talk about. So we're locked and loaded for Senator Rand Paul next Wednesday. So that's going to be a banger. If you did make an announcement at 4, would you come back to do another live show? Yes, I would. That's where the real fun starts. With that, let's get into today's show, and let's talk to cannabis investor and consultant, very good friend of the show, and probably one of the most respected people in the cannabis space, Seth Yakatan. Good to see you. Friday morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good. It always helps if you want to have a guest on if you send them the link, right?
It's all good. We're here. By the way, that's quite an intro. I don't know that I deserve that much credit.
You like that?
You very kindly. Yeah,
why
it's
not?
High level.
We like to have high qualified guests on, and I know you've had a popular feedback from our viewership. So I think it's been like since June we had you on. What have you been up to over this past summer? Traveling much?
Yeah, I've been traveling a little bit. Had to get one kid off to college and another kid off to Italy. So trying to get a couple things done in California. Had a small immigration raid at the Glass House Farm we had to contend with. So
Yeah. We
been
won't
an
get into
interesting.
that. We saw the press releases, but onwards and upwards, they had a great earnings report. And, we haven't talked to you since then, but I got some people here saying, is the title of today's podcast misleading? No, we actually want to talk about, in the event, and it's a big if, rescheduling is announced, what does the industry look like, let's say the next morning? If it's announced, let's say end of day. If it's midday, what does the industry look like overnight? Or I shouldn't say overnight, but immediately. So we'll get into that a little bit. But my big takeaway from earnings season is a lot of companies held their ground, which is good. So hopefully you combine that with maybe some news about rescheduling. It's a lot better shape to be in now than in comparison to if a lot of companies did very bad on their latest earnings. But all in all, I basically described it as an earnings report by many companies that they held their ground. Did you not think?
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I think in your tier one, Addison, Cresco, Curaleaf, GTI, Trulieve, Verano, other than some net revenue that was probably down year over year in that
Yeah.
group other than GTI, you had some real good wins in EBITDA and EBITDA margin kind of across the board. I think notably Trulieve and Ascend did really well in growing EBITDA.
Yep.
And I think the entire group did really well in either growing or maintaining adjusted EBITDA margin. And I think given how the first quarter news went, that was, I would say, a pleasant surprise for most people that are good observers. So I think overall the print for the sector was positive. I think notably TerraSend and Miramed and obviously Glasshouse did really well. So I do think that as a group, you saw the sector probably perform a little bit better than it had normally. So
yeah. Michael Grippin asks a good question. You need to ask is where growth comes from after each market turns on matures, but we rarely see revenue growth and the revenue hold in new markets. Care to comment on that?
I'm not sure that you do. The guys at Bengal Capital talk about this notion of what we call excess EBITDA, where, for the first couple of years in a market as it comes online, you have this, huge amount of revenue, and then it kind of evens out over time. I can't do this inverse thing. But I don't know that it does. If you turn on a market that's potentially oversaturated and there's a limited number of suppliers, and then 2 to 3 years everyone comes in and price compression occurs. You've kind of seen that story or that movie play in many markets. Certain markets it's kind of held, like Missouri, but if you look at Michigan, which is a top 5 market, it's very difficult to compete there just because. But it's still $1.5 billion market. So
I know the groups in Michigan who are doing business there, and if you're not in, you're definitely out. It's a tough market to basically dive into, but just the cost per gram that's gone on in that state has tumbled in the last couple of years, but they've got a stranglehold on it. But if you're outside looking in, you can understand why Jason Wild and the crew stepped away from Michigan.
I was just going to say that. I mean, so much so that you had one of the largest deals that had been done for some assets, and then they unwound the deal 3 years later. So,
which I don't mind what he did there. Focus on what you're doing well. He seems to be doing an incredible job in the Northeast region, even New Jersey, which seems to be oversaturated with cannabis players now, but building a good market share there. And if you can compete and do well in that state, then that tells what you're doing fundamentally is sound. So job well done to them. But last time we also had you on is we said caution for Air Wellness. And man, we saw some news obviously in the summer where they were a casualty restructuring with creditors. They took on, I think it was a 14% bridge loan, they exiting markets, preparing for liquidation. All in all, in so many words, it's the end of Air Wellness, which I think a lot of people had an idea would happen. But once it becomes a reality, it's a real sobering reminder of what this industry could become in the event that, well, I don't even want to say in the event, we're actually at the point now where there's the point of no return. But do you see more stories like that based on current trends that are happening in the market right now, that we could see more stories like Air Wellness in the future?
Well, let's just go back to talk about the Air Wellness prognostication. Even a broken clock is correct twice a day. So I'm not going to take a whole lot of credit for being clairvoyant there. Maybe, I think in your tier 1 and tier 2 names, other than I think a Curaleaf refinance, your overhang relative to your refinance risk in the preponderance of those 15 or 20 names has kind of been pushed through.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's anyone else that's sitting out there with as much debt as AYR was sitting on. When you have me on, I do tend to talk about the private credit market and privates.
Yep.
I do think that there are some smaller, $50 to $200 million private either MSOs or companies that have taken on decent slugs of capital that are going to have to get worked through. So I do think there's a few more coming through. But that debt maturity wall that we were talking about in 25 and 26, I think most of them have climbed it, and if they haven't, they've gotten hit in the face.
Yep.
I don't know that there's too many more that I see that are potentially at risk for getting hit as hard as AYR.
Yeah. If you want access to some of those private companies, look at Chicago Atlantic because they invest in a lot of that infrastructure. But what do you think the lessons are that we learned here from Eris collapse? What does it teach us as an industry, we think?
I think too much debt, not enough cash flow is usually a recipe for disaster in any business. Also, I think that we've seen in our industry a series of structures of, RTOs, SPACs, and sale leasebacks that largely have been vehicles to allow for capital to flow in with not a lot of discipline and fiduciary responsibility. And there are exceptions to the failures in each of those structures. There's 3 or 4 very notable exceptions that have worked out, but a lot of them have really failed. I think AYR is, and I like a lot of the people there. AYR was a collection of assets that was slammed together as a result of being a SPAC that then had too much leverage in it.
You're right.
It was never a company.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think it was built to be sold to someone that was bigger, assuming that inflection happened, and it didn't. And I think that's just a bad design.
Yeah. I sometimes, I this is common sense, but the amount of infrastructure that a lot of companies have invested in across the country was so much uncertainty. I guess everything's, you can say everything's in hindsight when you look back right now, but at the same time, it just seems kind of crazy to think the industry. And I know there was so much optimism about in the early days about what this could become in the American market. But the amount of money that companies invested in infrastructure across many states without real uncertainty from Washington, you kind of sit back and go, why was this even in play? Why didn't we walk before we run? Because at the same time, this is the kind of the situation that we're dealing with many companies in the space right now, and why they're pushing out a lot of their debt. New markets haven't come online, right?
Correct. Or the markets that have come online, haven't have suffered from price compression after other players come in. I think the original model that a lot of people underwrote in cannabis, which is I'm going to build as much infrastructure and asset base in a limited license state as I possibly can because I'm there first and I'm going to hold serve, hasn't really worked.
Nope.
And I think you've seen that repeatedly. I also think that it's a function of a market. I look a lot at other markets other than cannabis. Biotech is a scarce capital market, which is just as difficult as this market. And, when you look at the 14 tier 1 and tier 2 or 15 tier 1 and tier 2 publics, they all kind of underwrote a strategy. If you look at it like developing a drug, you're going to have a 90, 80 or 90% failure rate. We probably have a 70% failure rate in cannabis. And so I think that's just part of the way an industry evolves at times.
Yeah. Nicholas and Johu, AV did not pump AR. He actually made a trade off of that when the HHS recommendation came back 2 years ago. It was heavily shorted at the time, and he made one hell of a trade, but he was not in it long term, and he made that very transparent. So those comments are a little misleading, but I want to get into today's show, and everyone has heard it, the industry, about rumors of rescheduling. We saw it, obviously, it became a reality back on August 11th when President Trump was asked during a presser about rescheduling cannabis, and he said it's something that we're looking into, and we will be making a decision in the next few weeks. So here we are, the third week. This is a few weeks. Who knows? This could happen at any moment. This could happen in a couple of weeks. I don't really know the timeline, but where I'm going with this is, if this announcement is made, let's say it's made, end of day today, What does the next morning look like the first few things from an investor standpoint that stand out to you once a rescheduling announcement is actually made? Like, do we see like how much institutional money from the Canadian side will jump into this? What should investors, in your opinion, be prepared for in the event this does happen?
So let's preface the conversation by saying, as a someone that's an insider allegedly in the industry, you hear these rumors.
Yep.
The rumor mill surrounding rescheduling in the last 20 to 25 days has been as frothy as I've ever
Me
heard it.
too.
So, you and I have gotten similar information that it was supposed to happen last Friday and was going to happen Tuesday, and today's going to be the day, and maybe it's going to happen next Tuesday, but it's coming, right? So I think the basis of the conversation is it seems like you have an inflection. I've largely held that the market in general has not priced in rescheduling,
You don't.
and no, I don't think so. And
Okay.
I think that if rescheduling does occur, across the board, you see a 50 to 100% increase in the price of equities, generally speaking, for your
Yep.
top 15 names. If you just look at what's happened in the month, call it the month of August for some of these names,
Toronto, Trueleaf. What
oh,
else?
I mean, look at
MSO.
just look at Glass House. I mean, after suffering probably the worst kind of news that you could have suffered for any company in any industry, the stock really didn't go anywhere. It went back up to almost $9 a share, right?
So
So
when was that news? Was that July?
it
When
was
it jumped?
July. It was July 10th. Yeah.
So July 10th, and then it got pulled back to I think around $5, if I'm right. And then
Yep.
late part of August, like you said, it pretty much doubled and came back to the normal price before the news came out. So it was around nine.
Right. I mean, you look at GTI, which I've been critical. I think Ben runs a very good company.
Yeah, he does.
Um, and that's a stock that in the last month has been as low as $7 and as high as $10 for no reason, right? I mean, I know what the all-time on that stock is 37. So I don't know if you're in at 37 that's a home run, but if your dollar average in GTI is $20, stay in there because I think the day after rescheduling occurs, that could be a 15, 18, 20, $22 stock. I talk a lot about a guy named Federico Gomez, who publishes research at ATB, and he did a table a couple weeks ago where he looked at the average trading multiples of the top 6 or 8 names as a multiple of EBITDA, and that was about a 5x. He thought they should be valued at about a 9x. He thought that the target with rescheduling was close to 15 or 16x, right?
Wow.
So that's 200% price appreciation.
Totally.
We've talked often about this inefficient, capital market that exists for cannabis stocks because most of them are traded on junior exchanges. They don't trade on technical fundamentals. They trade upon hype. They're usually
That's it.
thinly traded. There's not a lot of float. I think if rescheduling occurs, you have euphoria for a couple of days and then kind of a mean reversion where you lose some of that. But I will
Yeah,
tell you, I think it's game on if it
that's
happens.
for sure. It's going to be a couple of days. I think the big question, I always look back at the HHS recommendation. Let's face it, if we got an announcement, this is much bigger than an HHS a recommendation. That ran for a couple of weeks. So I have spoken to a few institutions in Canada, and they've said that a lot of brokers are not going to basically step in until the actual announcement is made. And then once they see price action, even in the event it doubles, that's when they probably will get in. So it makes me believe this could get extended a little bit longer than what people are really preparing for. And that's kind of like, I'm curious because we saw the Canadian market and the Canadian institutions drive up this whole sector 10 years ago. We understand rescheduling doesn't allow institutions to come in on the US side, but a lot of these big institutions in Canada can buy into these American players. So I'm curious to see how much they could drive this market in the event that we do get rescheduling because
I
there's some big money there.
I think they're going to come back. I'm going to throw a name at you. One of the most prolific equity bankers in the space for a long time has been a guy named Steve Winokur at Canaccord Genuity.
I know.
Think Steve's probably raised more equity capital for anybody than anyone.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for him personally and professionally. And I talk to him frequently. I think if rescheduling happens, he's going to be one of the busiest guys on the planet.
Yeah.
Because what I do think is going to happen is I don't think it's going to be show up on Bay Street and here's 40 million bucks. I think it's going to be if you're Curaleaf or Verano, show up on Bay Street and here's 200.
Yep.
Right. Or if you can do what Ben has recently done with this Agrify licensing deal and you show up with a NASDAQ vehicle on Wall Street, maybe you could raise 50 or 100 million bucks. So what I do think will happen is I think the window will open for more elite and better names that as opposed to where we were in 2014 where anybody, with a heartbeat that and a business plan got a check. But I think the window will open hard.
Yeah. I agree. Also saw the rumors about, not rumors, but the TSX index of adding in Curaleaf. That's still up in the air, but that could come to fruition at some point this month, or I think it's extended into either October or November. But I
think that could happen. I mean, I don't think anyone knows if this goes to Schedule 3 what it means. I think the large held thought is that 280E probably goes away.
Yeah,
for most people. I don't know if it allows you to list on an exchange, but when markets were a lot frothier and psychedelics companies were getting funded left and right, you probably saw people that were walking around with ketamine clinics that were getting funded all over the place. So it did. So I also think that there could also be kind of a euphoric, hey, I can figure out how to get into the vertical because it's now a 3 and it's not as viced as it was before.
Yeah.
I think it's the first step to more nuance.
Yeah. Let's face it, the U.S. market is a recreational play. And I know there's a lot of, one thing's for sure, common sense is it needs to be moved to a Schedule 3. To have no medical benefits when you have so much testimonies from people across the country and the overwhelming amount of support. And are politicians for the people? No, but this is just getting louder and louder and louder. And the amount of people that have got involved in this conversation of the last 2 months, common sense eventually is going to have to come into play. But this is something that the industry should have had to do. Yes, they were trying to do it in some capacity over the last few years, but not to this level. And now I think it's on the radar of many lawmakers. And then hopefully, if we do get an announcement, the big question is, how do they view this differently? I think they view it differently a lot. But, to your point about how the market moves, fundamentally, we look at 280E. There's a lot of companies that aren't paying taxes right now. I don't dive too much into that because that's for tomorrow's news. But for as far as the immediate short term, this industry, as you said, it moves on news. And this is the biggest announcement that the industry, if it does get announced, will experience. And because of that, like you said, you're going to see equities move very, very hard, in my opinion.
Yeah, and let's talk about the impact of 280E for a minute for your listeners, right? And for the broader industry. So the first thing is that if you look at that gang of 14 or gang of 15 that I'm going to call the tier 1 and tier 2, honestly, I think other than GTI, almost every other one there doesn't actually pay the 280E and just accrues it. So the net tax benefit to the industry as a whole isn't huge. Now, if you're a pure play retailer, and there's one that I've talked to you about before. It's a company in California called Embark.
Okay.
That has 18 stores, and all you do is retail. And let's just call it $100 million revenue company. Like that's $15 or $18 million of 280E that's going out the door last year that isn't going out the door next year. So where I do think you see the momentum occur if it goes to a 3 is that the people who are really paying 280E are going to get 18 to 20% of their cash back on their balance sheet. And I think that is going to fuel some level of lower middle market M&A, and it's going to reinvigorate the industry at some level, specifically in places like California and Arizona and Missouri, where you have a lot of people that are private, operating anywhere between 15 to 30 doors, and really paying 280, it opens up the door for them to do a lot more things. So you might not feel it at the MSO level. I think you feel it at the lower middle market private level. I think if you get the price appreciation that you think we get at the MSO level, I would be an advocate for people then doing M&A with paper, right?
Yeah.
And that I think you'll see a lot of activity like that. I do think you'll
I
see
agree.
someone else pull the Ben model and flip the brands into an Nasdaq vehicle, because I know I'm working on a deal like that right now.
So, well, good to know. We've often heard that this is an incremental step, that the biggest issue is banking. But in order to get to banking, the first step is rescheduling. So if it does get rescheduled and we look at states 2.0 and safer, and I don't want to, okay, let's say we move down that road, it becomes somewhat of a reality. How much do you think M&A is going to take place once some of these bills indeed are actually passed? And what does that industry look like? Because you're probably going to get a lot of public companies with capital being allocated to them once again. And further to that, are there a lot of private plays that are at stake here right now that they could actually scoop up? Like, how does that all look and play out?
I think for me, and I'm not the political guy, states 2.0 is more important to me than safer, because the moment that as drafted and as I've read it, states 2.0 would allow you to list a company on NASDAQ or
Yep.
NYSE.
Yep.
And the moment that you do that, Mr. Dales, the proverbial gloves are thrown off and you are in a bare knuckle brawl, because that opens up the entirety of the US capital market, and it opens up the global strategic buyer market, which is closed. I've done a lot of work looking at where every single CPG vertical that's at 1 degree of separation away from cannabis adjacent lies. And if you look at alcohol, tobacco, and pharmaceutical and confection, there's 130 global confectionery companies that do north of $1 billion in revenue. And as far as I can tell, not one of them has made a cannabis investment.
Not one.
And if cannabis is a $30 billion industry and gummies are 10% market share, you can just do the math between Wild and Gruen Edibles and one or two other people and say, well, there's probably an M&A deal there, right? So I think the unlock is the listing requirement, because then that allows all the people whose charters that say I can't invest here to go away, and that just becomes crazy. Like, another unlock is if you can use the federal wire system and you can bank with the protection of the Federal Reserve as an industry.
Yep.
I've big fan of Chicago Atlantic, but their cost of capital, they'll tell you, is 12%. Well, if all of a sudden 3 banks can get into the cannabis industry and they can start loaning money at 8%, like, you're going to have a tidal wave of refinancings that's going to occur and more money that's going to show up. So there's huge game changers there. So, if one game changer is capital markets opening up, the more important game changer for me is reasonably cost capital and access to it, and strategic and financial buyers showing up, which, if you've seen my tsunami, it's trillions of dollars that unlock, so.
Deschedule now, writes Shad. Sorry, Shad, your bias towards Schedule 3 hampers what could be a freer market. Listen, I'm doing my due diligence right now.
How about this? Let me stick up for my friend Mr. Dales. There's no bias. This guy's been out there for years, advocating for everybody, banging the boards, going to Washington, kissing babies, shaking hands. I don't go to Washington. I don't put on a suit and talk to those idiots. Okay.
Yeah.
Our king, our president, might wake up tomorrow and do something smart, but don't here's a guy who's out there trying to advocate for change, and he is just realistic. I think Schedule 3 is not, I want full descheduling. If these morons can't figure out how to release the Epstein files and they're going to let Schedule 3 occur, it's an incremental step. Is it the be all and end all? It's not. I think he's advocating for an incremental change, as am I, and any change is going to be better than where we are, because we've got handcuffs on us and the industry's still marginalized, and it's a $30 billion revenue industry. And now you got me on the soapbox. How about this, Mr. Dales? How about, what's the size of the black market?
Yeah, I know. I saw that. It's 15.
Imagine.
I listened to Mark Cahotis in his Twitter space yesterday, but he's saying it's 15 times the size of the legal market.
let's
You
say
gotta
it's
you gotta put two and two together and look at the big picture here, right? And what he's trying to build, meeting President Trump. And it's like he's trying to crack down on all this drug crime. We've seen the stories the last couple of weeks. We had, I forget the gentleman's name from Maine on a couple months ago or a couple of weeks ago, but the amount of CCP that's in Maine alone, that's not even just across Maine, that's across North America. I had Derek Maltz on that talked about the influx of.
Let's talk about the unlocks, right? Let's keep it simple. Let's say the black market's the size of the legal market. So you take a $30 billion market, you automatically make it a $60 billion market. One unlock. Okay, let's say it's just 30 billion. Hoodie had put out some data that I did a post on that talked about where cannabis should be as a CPG in terms of annual spend per household, and it's about $800. So if you apply that metric to the average spend for cannabis in the legal markets, the size of the market doubles. So forget about capital markets. If all you did was figure out a way to disintermediate the black market or eliminate it and get cannabis at a, comparative level to where alcohol is from consumer share of wallet, it goes from a $30 billion industry to a $90 billion industry overnight. So there's plenty of growth that's available. Plenty of growth.
Tons of data too that shows in legal markets where it's gone live, crime rate has actually gone down. Youth access has gone down. And when you see these opinion pieces like Ben Carson came out the other day, and I got a video coming out later today, but it's just like, show me the data, Mr. Carson, on how you think that rescheduling could actually create more crime, especially in urban areas. And I'm just like, show me the data. I'm not sitting here saying I'm disagreeing with you, because if you have data that backs that up, and I'm here to have a conversation, but there's none of that where data has shown in various states, especially like Washington and Colorado, that totally contradicts that a statement like that. But that's the whole point is, it's just common sense. 80% of people want some sort of cannabis reform, and hopefully that we get it. But in the event that we do, if cannabis is moved to a Schedule 3, do you expect, how fast do you think big alcohol, big tobacco do step in? Only on a rescheduling announcement, or does it happen at all?
Tomorrow,
huh?
I think so. I mean, they're already in. We've talked about the Delta Beverage situation. Delta Beverage, I've seen numbers that say, that's a $2 to $3 billion SKU set for 2025, and it's being distributed largely through the 3-tier system currently. I think you probably need some farm bill clarity, but I definitely believe that it upregulates they're in every room and every meeting that I go to now.
Do they?
Are they? And they've been there for the year, especially big alcohol. So, they're trying to figure it out. And because of how they dominate the 3-tier system and retail, they own the rails. They're looking for things to put on their distribution rails, just like anyone else. So yes, I mean the amount, something else. Texas's hemp ban got defeated yesterday again for a second time. I don't believe in conspiracy. I'm not a political animal. That is a organized and well-funded alcohol lobby working behind the scenes to make policy changes because they know how to. They can. They've been doing it since 1950. They have got the money. They've got the money. And they've got the connections. And that's where I see the future being moved.
So when you look at their scale, distribution, and lobbying power, does that create in any way a monopoly risk? Like, are they going to come in? Would you say, what's the first step when you say they dip into the industry? Do they come up and look at Curaleaf and say, we're buying you out?
I think they start to buy beverage companies first.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a conspiracist, but I definitely look at evidence. If I look at what's happened in Missouri and Illinois and Tennessee and Louisiana and now Texas, as it relates to hemp, effectively all of those states have regulated hemp in some way, shape, or form that preserves the cannabis industry and puts decision-making power surrounding beverages and hemp in the hands of the alcohol industry.
Yeah, good point.
It's now 5 times. It's going to happen everywhere in the SEC. Mark my words. Mark my words. It's not about conspiracy. It's about money. And I think what you're going to see is that the 3-tier system is going to maintain hegemony, and figure out a way to continue to make the trains run.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's funny you bring up beverages. Bo Whitney from Whitney Economics actually came out with a report this week, 2024, that THC beverages across the country hit 1.1 billion. Says the upside potential these next few years is 15 billion. And it's all about health and wellness right now. And when you look at especially 30 and under, like I saw Andrew Huberman on with Bill Maher, and he was explaining about 2 drinks socially per week is actually too much. It increases your risk of heart disease and cancer. And it was quite comical because everyone was saying, well, clearly I'm on my way to having cancer and heart disease because I'm drinking way too much. And a lot of the people that he was interviewing, Bill Maher, on that panel were like, in their 50s. But when you look at people 30 and under and their lifestyles and the way they view life and what they want into their body, you can understand why alcohol is just falling off a cliff right now. And this is why big alcohol looks around 100 plus years and says, okay, we've got to pivot. It kind of reminds me of cigarettes. You see, I'm not saying and condoning basically all younger people that vaping is good, but the way they consume product now, when's the last time you saw a 25-year-old buy a pack of cigarettes? That never happens.
Doesn't happen. I haven't seen it. There's a lot of people smoking in the Northeast. I'll tell you that much. But I was out there for a couple of weeks, and I was overwhelmed by the amount of smokers, older smokers there. Just anecdotally.
When I was at Mary Jane in Berlin, I landed the day before the conference started, and by the time I got to my hotel, it was like noon, and I thought, got to stay up because I got jet lag. So I went down to this local restaurant in a patio. So I was sitting at the table by myself, and I saw these 9 or 10 ladies come in with luggages. And I had my back to them, and all of a sudden I could smell smoke in the air. I turned around. There's about 6 ashtrays, 9 ladies just crushing darts. And I'm like, that's something you just don't see in North America anymore.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
No. So, all right. So
it's okay. But I think we're in for a fun ride. I mean, I'm not sure if this thing is going to happen or not. If it does, I've long advocated that any step towards relaxation of federal rules is going to be good for us. I don't think it's the final answer, but I do think that if rescheduling or descheduling did happen today, at the end of the day, that Monday, my phone's going to melt.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So the big takeaway here is that if and when we get an announcement the next day, you could see prices double. Which I think is probably realistic as well. Once rescheduling is announced, you could see big tobacco and big alcohol, especially on the beverage side, start entering the space as soon as, like, I don't want to say the next day figuratively, but you're going to see them come in real soon is what you're thinking.
I also think you see the return of institutional equity capital for very good names and good ideas.
So when you look at that, maybe further define what that means. Canada, US, how does that work?
I think it's Canada. I don't know that rescheduling gets rid of the banking issues that occur in the US.
It doesn't.
But I think, the robust public equity capital market that existed in Canada for cannabis between 14 and 17, probably gets reignited at some level. Maybe not to the same way, but I think it gets reignited at some level because you're just going to have so much price depreciation that market's going to want to jump in.
I agree. Everything old is new again. Here we are. Quite possibly institutional money out of Canada and Bay Street could drive this again, which if it's federally legalized in Canada, why wouldn't it be?
I'll be there Tuesday if it is. You and I can have whiskeys on me. How about that?
Where are you going?
Well, I mean, if descheduling is announced on Monday, I will be holed up on Bay Street by Tuesday. Trust me.
You mean rescheduling, but descheduling would be a whole new game. I'd say go to Wall Street.
Sorry, rescheduling.
Yes.
Rescheduling. If we get the rescheduling announcement on Monday, drinks on me on Bay Street Tuesday night. How about that?
That sounds great. Descheduling, I would say don't bother coming to Bay Street. You can go straight to Wall Street because they could probably
descheduling happens. I'll just fly you to the private yacht in the Azores.
Could you imagine? It was funny. I was listening to the Spaces last night with Livy, Shane Pennington, and Mark Cohodes, and there were some interesting points. Livy was saying that the Dems in some ways could steal this issue from the Republicans. And I was like, well, how's that? And she was saying, if we don't go all the way to full descheduling, that could be a narrative that they could build come midterms. Now, I've gotten some feedback with some comments here and people questioning whether I think incremental is the smart way to go. Look, if it's up to me, let's go straight to descheduling and legalize this. I think all would be fine. The infrastructure in the right way has got to be built. But Mark actually brought up some good points too, to make sure that the illicit market basically gets squashed, and some of the law enforcement laws that should be passed pertaining to that. But that takes a long time, and that's a lot of uptake. But rescheduling is just incremental steps. That's just the way this government is going to view this right now. Would I like full legalization? 100%, but they're not going to view it like this. And that's just the reality. And a lot of people are looking at this differently that follow this space closely. But we also have to remember there's a ton of people that don't know this space very closely. And for them just to come out and legalize this overnight, it would cause a lot of backlash. And I think when it comes to policymakers, it's maybe one day they'll consider, but the first step in all this process is a rescheduling announcement. Because one thing I think everyone can agree on, cannabis should not be on the same level as heroin. Think about that.
Yeah, agree with you. And you've been saying that for years, so thank you.
I know. Well, listen, appreciate you checking in. Tell Kyle and Graham that we say hi. I need to get those guys back on. And
I will.
If it is a get announced, make yourself available. I'd love to have you back on. All right, sir.
For you, I'll stop what I'm doing. I'm going to be out on the road a little bit this year. Don't know when I'm going to see you. Probably Vegas.
I will be in Vegas. There's some guys that actually we're working with right now. One guy I met actually at Mary Jane, and incredible guy. He was the founder of the Yellow Pages. Just looked like an everyday guy, but incredible guy. He's got a place out in Newport Beach. He was renting his house out to Jake Paul for his training. But anyway, we might be doing an event. We're hoping at a mansion just off the strip in Vegas. We're going to do some podcasts there. So,
well, if you need a LinkedIn influencer to show up, I know somebody who might be available.
Tough life, huh? But yeah, if we get an announcement, that'll be one of the greatest MJ business we've had in years, because the sentiment's kind of been like this the last couple of years, but that would spike it right back up. But we'll see.
Yeah. We'll do.
All right, sir. Good seeing you, and happy Friday. And I'll hopefully hear from you soon. All right.
As always, I am grateful to be on the show, and thank you for the opportunity. We'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Seth Yakatan, cannabis investor and consultant, does a lot of work with Glasshouse. Deschedule now, all good. Sorry, Shad, your bias towards Schedule 3 hampers what could be a freer market. Getting back to my point there, I get it, deschedule now. I want it descheduled, but I've had conversations with these people from Washington. I know how they think and operate, and we follow this space very closely. There's a lot of data that backs that up, but at the same time too, it's like, if you see somebody attractive on the first date, you don't ask them to marry you. This is all part of the process. And hopefully, as we start to have more conversations, more of this information will be presented to the appropriate people, and they get educated more. But why do I feel this is different this time? Because nowhere has a president who I've seen comment about, yes, we're looking at rescheduling, and we will have a decision in the next few weeks. Leave it at that. So that's why I have some optimism, because that's why it feels different this time. If that comment wasn't made, then I would still question it in some ways. But I got Guap in the background here. We're going to bring Guap up in just a moment. We'll get a recap with him after our segment. But Arns, let's roll, baby. It's time for chart. All right, Friday. Let's bring in Dan for the chart, guys, here on another Friday. Good to see you, sir. And what a week. A lot of to this typical cannabis. Oh, no. Announcement didn't come last Friday. Then all of a sudden we're starting to feel like, some doubt. And we've seen price action that's been very volatile this week. We saw support at $5 and a resistance at $6 for MSOS. That's now trading at, last I checked, it was $460. So
we popped since then. We had a nice little pop there to the 490s. Now we're 480.
Okay.
It's the same thing as last week. Everybody's hoping that Trump's 4 p.m. We don't know what he's going to talk about at 4 p.m. It's the same thing. The setup's there for some strength into that, and then if we don't get it, some more weakness.
We should just copy and paste what we said last Friday and just enter it in here, and we're just in the same situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, last week was about preparing people for if we do not get an announcement because we are running up and because of the inside info, we're going to pull back. And it was pretty much announcement or weekly consolidation. And here's the weekly chart. We've got the consolidation. At this point, there are no red flags, but something I mentioned last week is the potential for this head and shoulders, where again, we have a daily bounce now underway. Anything under that 602 high is a lower high. And if we go through the weekend and we head to next week and there's no announcement again, this can definitely be a daily head and shoulders. And, right now the bulls are trying to defend this previous base and we're above it at the moment. Last consolidation period, we held 440s, 430s.
Yes.
So yesterday, 440s again. But again, if no time is on the side of the bears, as it has been for years in this sector, where every day, every week that's not an announcement, they have momentum because this sector has PTSD, rightfully. Yes. And so if we don't, $5 is going to be resistance again, as it was 10 minutes ago. And if we don't get an announcement tonight and over the weekend, then we're probably going to see a pullback continue.
Yeah, I hear you. We're seeing, and we've had a lot of questions, the last 15 to 20 minutes of certain trading days where the whole sector just falls off a cliff. Now, I've had some conversations with some brokers up in Canada where these institutions can come buy in. But if they don't see Dan, for example, MSOS buying after 2 o'clock, they can't hold this stock overnight, whether how much that reality or not. But we've seen Dan buying recently. So what is happening here each day that you see? Like yesterday, for example, MSOs was up to like a 480, and then within the last 10, 15 minutes, drops right back down to 457. And we've seen this time and time again. So maybe if you can explain to us what the rationale is behind all this when this does happen.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, as far as the mechanics between the swap and the ETF and all that, I don't dive in head first. What's his name on Twitter? Sammy J.
Sammy J.
Yeah, he follows it way more in depth. For me, it's not a time. It'll be a time sink for me. It's not going to make me more money. I'm aware of it. We're going to dump at the end of the day often, but for me to spend hours and hours trying to figure out why, that's something as a technical trader. Why is at the bottom of my list for things that I care about? Why is this going up? Why is this happening? Yeah. I don't care. I just care about the price level. So, this is a rising wedge bearish pattern yesterday after hour or into the end of the day where you break resistance, you get no follow through. You break resistance, you get no follow through. And as soon as you lose this support level, the uptrend's lost. Now, can you assume that we're about to go straight down however many percent? No, but if you know this name, as you mentioned, it happens plenty of times. So, on the way up, there were multiple times this happened, and I was buying at the end of the day, and that led to some nice gains the next morning. Things have shifted because of last weekend's lack of announcement. I'm no longer as aggressively buying these dips. I'm still trading around a core swing position, but things have shifted in terms of sentiment. Sentiment's back in the gutter. And just with regards to that, if we had gotten the announcement at $6 when everybody said it's coming today, there would have been more selling pressure on that announcement. And now because we're back to despair mode, we can definitely rip on an announcement because everybody's back to it's not going to happen. We're getting stringed along again. And maybe we are. I have no idea. Just everybody watching, just come to the clear conclusion that nobody online knows when. Just operate as your base understanding. You can have confidence that people think it's going to happen, but as far as timing, that's just a fool's game. Nobody knows. And people ask me, what's going to happen if we get the announcement? Does it happen after hours? Does it happen at 10 a.m.? Does it happen at 2 p.m.? All of these things would influence my answer. Did we just run 50%? Have we just pulled back 50%? All of these things I have to know, and they're all unknown. So I can't predict without having the setup. And so again, just, set your volume alerts and do your best to act as quickly as possible. If you can act in the first 5 minutes, if it happens during regular hours, MSOS is going to halt up and then the individual names will keep trading. And so if you can't buy MSOS, you run and you buy, some of the individual names on the OTC. And that's ideally if you can act as soon as possible.
Yeah. Well, I just had the conversation with our previous guest on what he thinks these equities will do once an announcement is made. If it does happen, let's say the day before, even midday, could we see a double? I think you'll see a double with some of these names instantly. But, again, I don't want to talk about timelines and hypotheticals. What I would like to see is like what are certain trends that we could be prepared for in the event that this does happen. But as far as price action and timelines and everything, no sense in going there. But we did see this week, one of the true big stories this week was Village Farms, VFF. It saw a pullback, but has since rebounded. But obviously this was overbought, but it had a sharp decline earlier this week. At one point, I think it was down to 222 after seeing highs of over $3. But I haven't checked the market or the price this morning, but where are we at? And really, was this overbought to explain why this was got pulled back the way it did?
Yeah, definitely overbought. And again, it was just everybody leading up to a binary event. We either get the announcement this Friday or, everybody was wrong. And of course, when it didn't happen, we know we're going to pull back into weekly consolidation. And so again, you look at this weekly consolidation, there's no red flags. We held EMA 12 last time. We'll just want to do that again. We bounced right above it. We did have some very unusual extended hours price action going on with VFF on Tuesday. And that threw me for a little bit of a loop. And that was an opportunity. Again, these are inefficient markets. And so anybody paying attention Tuesday after hours, by Wednesday morning, 30 minutes into the trading day, we're up 15-20% from those after hours levels. So again, I've been flipping these when MSOS, I don't like a grind down with lower highs and lower lows and a slow bleed. Give me that flush. If I'm playing a bounce, I want it to dump as hard as possible because what is happening is you're clearing out the order book. And then as soon as the bottom is hit, there's very little resistance on the way back up. So you get that V shape of action. Here's VFF yesterday, a perfect example where
that's a great point.
We dropped down. There's a 16% drop in an hour. And then because there's a lack of resistance, you get that 17% bounce. And so as a trader, the more extreme and fast, the better. Again, is just to mention, MSOS recently did a drop that I didn't like for playing the bounce because it was a slow bleed. And that was Wednesday. Just these I don't like that slow bleed. Give me that straight drop.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. Good to know. Duly noted. Oilers 48 writes, but how long will the run last is the question. Well, like I said earlier in my previous interview with Seth, I have spoken to some institutional contacts in Canada. I think Canada is going to drive a lot of this surge because they can come in and buy these equities. But conversations I've had and let them know what potentially could be at stake here, they've shown interest but have not dipped into cannabis in years. So they're going to have to see an announcement and actual price action before they step in. So with that, do I think this could happen in a matter of days? No, I think it's going to be longer. But as far as how long, I think it runs for at least a good couple of weeks, in my opinion. But
and again, it's the unknowns where, does Trump say, is an announcement saying, I'm advising the DEA to do this? Or does he say, we're now rescheduled? And do we get a path to uplisting? And do we get the M&A? I mean, anybody that was trading Canopy, when we got that announcement with Constellation, that was a huge sector catalyst. And does that happen or not? That's going to significantly influence how much follow through or not we get. So again, nobody knows. And it's always going to just be one day at a time. And we have, it can't just be rescheduled and that's it. We have to have a couple more dangling carrots if we're going to get, continuation and bulls holding on for longer term gains. And again, as always, do both. Have a partial position that you're holding long term if you want, but have some that you do sell into extreme euphoria, and then you can reload when the inevitable 30% drops happen, or just don't box yourself in to just being a bag holder.
Yeah, agreed. Getting a lot of talk and conversation this week about MSOS and how it works and why a lot of people are interested in that company. But a lot of people feel like it's something you don't hold long term. Do you know much about it? And do you care to maybe comment on that?
So yeah, not a company. It's a leveraged ETF. Essentially, it's gonna, what is it? 2x MSOS. Yeah. But that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to track MSOS. MSOS is designed to track MSOS 2x. So, if I have limited capital, then that's something I can try and get more bang for my buck. And there is built-in time decay. So I'm not going to be able to explain the intricacies of that. But generally speaking, leveraged ETFs, I trade leveraged ETFs all the time. S&P 500, NASDAQ, long, short, they're for trading because there is built-in time decay. And if you want to learn more about that, you got AI, get on AI and learn about why is there leveraged time decay in ETFs. But again, just the perfect example is MSOX, the bounce that we just had. When we topped out, we got to the early December levels, whereas MSOS bounce, had we only gotten to early December levels, we would have topped out at $4 instead of $6. So that's just showing you what months of time decay does there. So it's similar to options in the sense that, you're betting on something happening in a certain time frame, so you don't get worn out by that time decay. And if it doesn't, then it's going to be way more painful on the way down, obviously.
Yeah, I hear you. Another company I wanted to bring up was CGC. They made some announcement last week. I know a lot of people were a little frustrated with the dilution, but it's once the darling in the space. I'm looking at this company right now. I do give credit to like Luke Maggio, the new CEO, and how he's cleaning things up. But this is just the reality of previous management and where we are today with this company. But you wonder if one day they can get this turned around. But it was some news that caught a lot of people's attention. They probably were hoping that wasn't the case, but we'll have more information with Luke on why that was announced, the timing of it all. But what are we seeing right now, Dan?
Well, the timing was because they wanted to take advantage of an elevated share price. You see this time and time again. I'm not looking at the balance sheet. I'm not looking at the fundamentals. I'm looking at this chart and I'm applying my significant penny stock experience and saying this is a dilution death spiral. And I've seen so many penny stocks just go to zero as a result. All the cannabis penny stocks I was trading 2010 to 2015 have gone to zero because of dilution. And, I've got a video on YouTube, Understanding Dilution, where I used ACB as the example of the dilution death spiral. And CGC, ever since that video, like 4 years ago, has just been following the same path, and Tilray to a certain degree as well. So, can a big fundamental catalyst turn the ship around? Maybe. I'm not a fundamental, investor, so I can't say. All I can say is that anybody investing in anything, one of the most important things you need to understand with your AI buddy is look up convertible debt and dilution, because it doesn't matter what the story is. It doesn't matter what the fundamentals are. Supply of shares trumps everything.
Well said. Well said. Somebody just wrote that we saw a bounce with high tide here this morning. Is that what it was? I saw in a comment here.
Everything's bouncing. Yeah, that's a solid one. Over the high of yesterday. We got to hourly oversold, I assume. Yeah, I mean, so now that's a key level. Bulls want to maintain that 315 support. Again, the weekly consolidation at this point, after going straight up, there are no red flags. It's healthy. So, if it remains the same, if we go through September with no word, we're going to keep a daily downtrend going with lower highs and lower lows in the most likely scenario. So we'll see. Today we're pumping up because people are hopeful, in part because people are hopeful that
at 4 o'clock press conference, Dan.
I mean, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to have my buy order filled out. Who knows? But
yeah, I hear you. All right, sir. Listen, we could go through a couple other stocks, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing as what we saw last week. We're in the waiting pattern, but I think there was some good feedback that you provided here today, especially with the pullback on VFF, that if we see this drop in a hurry, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you're going to see a bounce back, which we obviously saw later. I think the next day is what you said. It was up 15 to 20%. So some good takeaways, and as well, just how to position in the event that there is an announcement and how to play this out. But more importantly, if we don't, what are the upcoming trends that we'll see here in the next 1 to 2 weeks? So,
yep, I'm going to do another live stream today, 4:20 p.m.
4:20.
So I'll look at a bunch more charts then, and hopefully we'll have the announcement going, or Trump saying whatever he's going to. But people will sell after hours if Trump talks about something else. It's just a question of how much, but we'll do it on the live stream.
So if we get rescheduling announced, I think you and I need to go raise about, I don't know, $3-4 million, make this a proper media company. We join forces, and we call it what?
We'll think on that.
Listen, always appreciate your feedback, but good stuff. And at the same time, they can check you out at your YouTube channel at Chart Guys at 4:20 today, correct?
You got it.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate your time.
See ya.
All right. Always helpful, and hopefully got some good takeaways here, but no sense in going too much in deep into how certain companies are performing this past week. We all know that we could see a slow drip downwards if the longer this announcement gets delayed, or if there is an announcement. And again, as Dan said, no one knows. No one knows. But Christopher Brady brought up a very good question about if Trump dies, will JD Vance be on board with all this? I did find out last week that President Trump was under the weather, but nothing life-threatening. That's where a lot of this stuff online became kind of bogus. But either way, if he was sick or not last week, there was not an announcement that was happening last week. So that's the way it is. Anyways, let's bring in Guap here on a Friday. I see him online. Didn't know he wanted to come on, but good to see you, sir. What's going on?
Hey. Yeah, I was just coming on in the background because I wasn't sure Seth was showing up there at first, but he was excellent.
He was good.
I'm excited for Rand.
Yeah, we'll have got the text yesterday, and yeah, it'll be a really good show. Basically, the topic is about protect consumers, but don't let McConnell outlaw the hemp industry, which I completely agree with. So let's walk this through and talk about common sense, because in my personal opinion, Senator Rand Paul seems to be a lot more close in understanding as to not what's going on necessarily just in Kentucky, but across the country. He's had these proper conversations, and there are a lot of good players on the hemp side. They just need things regulated more in more direction about how they basically patch up this farm bill that was created back in 2018, which was created by Mitch McConnell. So let's not go from one mistake to another mistake. Let's add some gray into this conversation, not so much black and white, if that makes sense.
It depends who you ask, right? You know.
Well, I don't think it makes any sense.
I'm all for experimentation. I'm excited if North Carolina were to suddenly go a direction where small businesses could start, they were held to a higher standard, so age gating, safety label testing, proper labeling, all that. I'd be interested on some level to see how that experiment played out, because I think states should learn from each other. It is really hard to talk about states and policy there when you have this federal catalyst looming, right? I mean, Seth was so on point. I was in the background nodding quite a bit.
He doesn't talk a lot about Washington or the reform side, but when it comes to pure business, M&A, big alcohol, big tobacco, how fast that'll move, how equities will perform. He's had actually trips, and the reason why I came up with the Canadian angle is because I know he has spent quite a bit of time up on Bay Street over these last few months. And with that, I've had conversations with a lot of guys when I first got into the space before I launched my podcast as an investor. I have an account, full transparency. I actually have a position in Verano and MSOS. Just want to make that clear to everybody. But I've had conversations with a lot of brokers that raised a lot of money for cannabis companies in the early days, even in the US. Who are you pointing to? Oh,
yeah.
How old is he?
The little one.
She or he?
Sky is female.
She's grown quite a bit.
She's only seen MSOS go up. That's how young she is.
Got to bring in Sky high.
She likes blue sky breakouts, all of it. Yeah, I think the
I'm wearing
combination
the blue,
of
so maybe you should bring in the Sky.
Yeah, the combination of Seth and Dan today was excellent. What we've been trying to do from the beginning is get people in here with different perspectives, and it's been really fun. I just wanted to come on and note that we are closing in at 60,000 subscribers right now.
What are we at? I'm just looking right now.
We were at 50
in June,
3 months ago. Yeah. We were at 40 or under 40 when I started back in October. It hasn't even been a full year yet. So I'm not giving myself the credit. I'm giving you a lot of credit here.
31,000 new subs this year alone. So
we're getting
January 1.
Rand Paul next week. I mean, so it's exciting to get, people from sports, from policy, from capital markets guys to traders I mean, it's exciting time to be in this space. I'm excited for new investors, new voices, new ETFs, like new companies, new ideas, new strategies. I mean, I'm stoked for.
Prepare to see a lot of new cannabis pharma companies that will come live to the market if rescheduling is announced.
There's going to be all sorts of stuff happening. That's what Seth was driving at.
And then, like I've said, people, I just want you to understand, like, yes, there's conversations. I'm trying to do my due diligence, but there's certain things that, I'm not going to go out here and basically say as to like, because we don't know for sure whether some of this stuff is going to happen, but there's real conversation, there's real dialogue, there's real progress that's being made right now. And there's lots of conversations that are being had. But what's happening right now is figuring out what the right approach, all this stuff comes into play. You can't just have, descheduling like overnight.
We should have Shane back on. I thought that space was excellent. He can talk more in detail about the real pathway here and what it could lead to. It's just an excellent time to have these debates and these discussions, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the next chapter. I'm excited for patients. I'm excited for consumers. I'm excited for these businesses. I'm stoked for all of it, really. Yeah. And it's a privilege to be able to cover this space and have so much to look forward to here.
I can tell you right now, if rescheduling gets announced, I think that's the beginning of many things that will happen over this next 12 months, especially leading into midterms. So we get this first announcement, like everyone said, comment here earlier, that the dam will be broken and we'll see a pretty good run for about a year. So we'll see. Pat Schwartz, I subbed when Benjamin A. Smith was still around. Missed the guy. He got burnt out, was done to the cannabis space. He's now got a corporate job, and good for him. I keep in touch with Ben probably a couple times still per month. But smart guy, and he's happy with what he's doing now with his career. And that was just the case. There's a lot of people that ended up going that route in the cannabis space. Some great writers, Matt Lammers from MJ Biz. He went the same route too. He's from Toronto and he's doing the corporate world. And there's a lot of talented people that were involved in this space in the early days. It's just too bad that we didn't get reform earlier. And who knows, maybe some of those names and faces will come back to the industry. You never know. Never close the door completely.
Yeah, this space has chewed up and spit out quite a few people, good and bad, and will continue to do so for a while. I mean, it's a cutthroat business. There's opportunities. There's going to be more. I don't know. I just hopped on, not with a sonnet prepared or anything. I will say I'm not a buyer psychologist, market psychologist, but I'm playing one on TV. It's like we're watching the clock on the last day of school. We have to acknowledge it feels like, given how the rumors were flying around, it feels like everyone's just watching minute to minute. And I can feel how clenched everyone's butt is online about it. To get a little graphic, like everyone's tight. And I don't know, good things come to those who wait, and more business cliches could be said here, but it's you got to admit this is high drama.
Yeah, I hear you. We didn't replace Anthony with Ben. Anthony was already in play, but it's look, never say never. If there's more money in allocation, guess what? There's going to be companies that may invest in us, and then we grow that much more. If that's the event, then I can go out and get more of a bigger team. So who knows? Maybe old Benjamin J. Smith makes a return to Trade to Black. And I'm not speculating anything here, but yes, he was a good dude. He's very smart. He's very clever. I miss him. Yeah. But at the same time too, he's very happy with what he's doing now. Anthony has his own skill set. He's very opinionated. He's got a lot of research that he's done as far as the backgrounds and trends of the industry. He brings a lot of value to the company. So the whole idea is to make sure that we get better at what we do and start attracting bigger and more authoritative names. And a great example of that, Mike Tyson from a couple months ago, Derek Maltz, obviously in the summertime.
Maltz was great.
Senator Rand Paul is going to be on. So if we do get rescheduling, this is what starts to happen to people, is that Google, which owns YouTube, doesn't suppress content cannabis content creation as much because it's not classified as a Schedule 1. So with that, our reach gets bigger. We get picked up by algorithms, and our audience is going to grow and more and more and more. So all of you are the original OGs. All right. That's it for today. I've gone on. I didn't think this was going to be a long show, but this could be one of the longest live streams actually done. But AV is playing golf today. He's having a lot of fun. Told me he's wore 2 pants just in case he got a hole in one. So hopefully he's playing well. Shad lost a part of his ear just to interview. I don't think I did, but Guap's a beauty, isn't he? Al Harrington, too. That's another good name. Yep, got some great names. Marvin Washington. I still keep in touch with him. Great guy. Really good guy. So let's close the show with everyone's favorite music as we close this out on a Friday.
Yeah. Deep breaths, everyone. Deep breaths.
4 o'clock. Oh, baby. All eyes, 4 o'clock this afternoon. Will cannabis get announced? If it does, we'll see you back here at 4:30 with every single guest you could imagine. AV will join us on the 17th green as well.
I'm going to smoke so much weed, we'll be demonetized.
Do a show at 4:20. You're right, Rose.
Yeah.
I hope we do a show at 4:20.
Hey, if it's not this week, we'll do a show next week at 4:20. If it's not that week, we'll do it that week. I'm excited for all of it. Let's go.
Stop
trying to trade it all of a sudden, guys.
King writes, so the announcement is today. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if there is an announcement today, we'll be back here at 4:20. But until then, it's the waiting game. I don't know what to tell you. It's Friday. Go enjoy life. And if we're back here at 4:20, life will get a lot better. All right, folks, listen, I got the full weekly recap coming out Sunday afternoon. I got a good little interview coming out tomorrow about Ben Carson. I don't know what the heck that was all about, but yeah, I'll dive into that, questioning his stance on it all. Good one tonight, actually, 7 o'clock on the TDR Cannabis in 5. I don't know if you saw, but the full FDA report as to why they actually declined Lykos's trials from last year and the MAPP1 and PP2 trials and the drug towards methamphetamine. But I did a full recap on why that was actually declined by the FDA last year. Some real big question marks circulating around that trial last year. I don't understand it. It was the biggest moment for the psychedelic industry. We led with that. But I think there's a lot been learned. The bar has been set high. And as you probably have seen RFK recently say, since being appointed the head of the HHS, that he believes in psychedelic medicine, and we could see psilocybin rescheduled to Schedule 2. So by no means is psychedelics going anywhere. If anything, it's actually become more and more of a stronger conversation. So I got a video on that and a full breakdown as to why it was actually declined last year by the FDA, the full report a year later since that happened. And then weekly report, Sunday afternoon, back here Monday for the live stream, and mark in your calendars. Next, we'll go live at 4, but at 4:30, we'll bring Senator Rand Paul in to talk about the current hemp landscape. So that will be a big one. In the meantime, we'll see you back here Monday. Guap, good seeing you. And
yes,
have a good one.
Over the next few weeks, my sources say that in the days ahead, more rumors are soon imminent. Just put it all together.
That's got to be a hashtag that we should put under content.
Soon imminently.
Soon imminently.
Guys.
All right. Member for 1 month, Jake Westington. Thank you, sir. We're going to get that membership wall get up and running. I got to get that going. I've got so much on the plate right now. But yes, we'll get that. There's lots of people that we've been talking to. So we're going to have, for members only, some real insight. We're going to have trading. We're going to have exclusive interviews. We'll have the weekly recaps. We'll have some important information that's not available to everyone. So if you want to find out what that information is, we'll launch it. We'll announce it coming up in a few weeks, and we'll go from there. But in the meantime, I'm getting the hook for my producer. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock, everyone. So, what'd you think of all that information? Some interesting stuff that we just learned once again here at the TDR Trade To Black podcast. Let's keep the conversation going. So leave your comments below. We'd love to get your feedback. As usual, if you have time, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications. And stay connected with us here at the Trade To Black podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone.